Episode 11 of Are You Afraid of the Dark? The Tale of the Dark Music. An episode that not only is on everybody's top 10 list, but is also on the top 10 scariest, horrifying Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes to ever exist. And actually, this one is quite scary, and is by far the edgiest, if I can use that term, episode we've seen so far. This episode is written by DJ McHale, who's been directing the episode so far. And apparently his pen name is Chloe Brown. I don't really understand that, but it says written by Chloe Brown, but it's really DJ McHale. And it's a story told by Eric, a character that I'm going to miss because, well, let's just say he might not be here this entire season. Spoiler alert. Which is odd because he's a character that's featured the second most to Kristen and then Betty Ann. He's sarcastic, he's annoying, he looks like he's a bit younger than the other kids. And this time he's messing with his nemesis Frank and asking him, "Are you really afraid of the dark?" And Frank goes, No, I'm not really afraid of the dark. And that's how they set up this story. Eric throws the ashes on the fire, we get a title screen. Now we get to the story, where the main character is a kid by the name of Andy Carr, who lives with his mother and annoying sister Christina. But that is the least of his worries, because he's got this really bad bully, who seemingly attacks him every time he's just trying to do his paper route, and actually hit him. We actually see him punch him a few times and throw him off his bike. The bully's name is Coda, and it looks like he's wearing a Metallica, or more likely Megadeth shirt, but I guess they couldn't actually show the band, so we'll say it's an off-brand Megadeth shirt. But this guy's a metalhead for sure, come on. Who do you think this kid listens to? New Kids on the Block? Nobody, he's way too cool for that. But this is the first portrayal of a bully, even though it's so 80s teen movie bully. That is effective. The other bullies that we've seen so far, like episode 2, Tale of Laughing in the Dark, they don't come off as even attempting to be intimidating. At least this kid Coda looks about 3 years older than Andy Carr, is a little bit bigger, and they're at least trying to put on some type of metal aesthetic. So points for pulling out the 80s bad boy. Before this, it's just been someone else, a guy or girl who looks the same as everyone else, and apparently we're just supposed to believe they're a bully. This house belonged to his great uncle Niles, so they are still trying to clean it up, and his mother tells Andy to go into the basement and see if there's anything that they need over there and maybe clean things up a bit. Well, he does find something quite interesting. He finds an old antique radio, a wooden radio. So he does what any kid would do. He turns it on to see if this thing still freaking works. And just as he turns on this radio, the cellar door right across from him in the basement begins to shake, and the knob begins to turn. Almost like there's some evil being hidden behind this door that has been reactivated by the music. And when he turns the music off, it goes away. The inspiration for this episode seems to be the Stephen King novel It, since there is a monster behind this door, but it changes every single time. Pennywise the Clown is mostly known as being a clown, but he can actually transform into anything. And that's the case with this monster as well. And as always with these monsters in the closet, they get very hungry, so you have to feed them, which is going to play in a little bit later. It takes Eric a second to understand the music is really what's activating this cellar, as he tries to show his mom, but since no music is playing, she opens up the cellar and there's nothing there. He's trying to do his paper route again, and guess who tries to attack him again? Coda, and this time he chases him to his house. We learn that Coda has an abusive father, so they give some insight into why he's acting like this, and maybe probably it's that violent metal music. Maybe just listen to Slayer's Rain in Blood, and you just had to beat up some twerps and give them swirlies. But this time the bully gets a real comeuppance. As Eric is smart, he leads him into his house, into the cellar door, and leads Coda into the basement where he turns on the music, and what do we get? Well, we get the cellar doors opening, and taking Coda in to this new dimension and swallowing him whole. As I mentioned before, we get several examples of what this being is. My favorite is when it comes at Eric like a doll. I think it looks super creepy. And they could have rested on their laurels and just used this character over and over again in this episode. We actually only see it in this one scene. Life-size doll with very, very puffy artificial cheeks. And you wonder why more horror series don't use villains like this. Obviously it's a kids episode, so they can't go too gross. But I don't know. I think this is more effective than just showing a werewolf or something. We also see where he opens the door and he's invited into a carnival. Once again, I think playing on something like It, where he's being beckoned in to come ride the ferry rides and have fun and eat some popcorn, because they all float down here. The character Andy Carr is played by Graham Sealkirk, who Unfortunately, this is his only acting credit, and he actually does quite a good job. He doesn't oversell his dorky character. He plays it really straight, and is supposed to come off as the normal kid, which he pulls off really well. The bully Kodo is played by Leif Anderson. 3 episodes of Storm of the Century. Wow, that's a blast from the past. Remember when they were running these Stephen King miniseries? Red Rose was another one. And I saw part of Storm of the Century, loved it, but was never able to finish it. So that might be one to put on the list to review in the future, because I would love to actually finish that series. See, back in the day, kids, 1999, you had to actually record things on VHS or actually catch it when it premieres. And I caught one of the Storm of the Centuries. I didn't catch the other 2. My dial-up internet back then sucked. So Andy's in a bit of a dilemma. Koda has been sucked into this cellar, and while he wanted to scare him, he didn't actually want the creatures to take him. He ended up turning off the music, thinking that they wouldn't take him as fast as they did. So he feels a little bad. But this creature from behind the cellar makes him a deal, an offer he can't refuse.
Who are you?
You only have to do one thing. Feed me, feed me.
And this is the second episode to feature a dark ending where the good guys don't necessarily win. Looks like Andy's given into the dark side. They even end it with the creature saying that Andy has to feed him more people. And you hear his sister upstairs whining and crying, and a sly look on his face. But apparently this was too much for Are You Afraid of the Dark, because Eric cuts back from the story and goes, oh no, he doesn't feed his sister to the monster, even though we're totally implying that it doesn't happen. And this was a great story, my favorite so far. It would work well also as a Tales from the Crypt or an adult horror story as well. The idea of a radio, or music in general, drawing out this monster that continually changes shapes from a carnival to beady red eyes to a doll. I love it. And there's always something so sinister about a monster that needs to be fed. Can't they just live off Carrabba's and Panda Express like I do? Apparently not. And we see some fun facts for this episode. Spoiler, this will be Eric, the Midnight Society's last story. We'll see what happens to him. But I think this character is really good. A.J. Henderson, who plays the carny that Andy briefly sees, is appeared 2 episodes later in The Tale of the Pinball Wizard. Sure, a play off the Who song. Another thing I've noticed is when they have these reoccurring characters, they don't tend to use them 3 years in the future. If they like you in this episode, they're going to use you maybe in the next episode, or maybe 2 or 3 episodes in the future. Get a list of actors, they use them a few times, and then discard them. Like used tissues. This part says, this marked the first time where one of the Midnight Society breaks the 4th wall at the end. Frank shines a light on his face and says, paybacks are sweet. Yes, Frank does end up scaring Eric at the end. If that was breaking the 4th wall, it's a very sly way of doing it, because he does look directly into the camera. But I actually read it that he was addressing another one of the Midnight Society characters. But I guess he could also be addressing the audience too. Next up is the Tale of the Prom Queen, on our journey to review every single episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Check out our playlist for the other series that we've covered. We're almost done Tales from the Dark Side, finished Monsters, Fear Itself. We're doing Mystery Science Theater 3000, Cowboy Bebop, Pet Shop of Horrors, and Black Mirror. Thanks.